Congressman Wenstrup sits on the all-important House Intelligence Committee. Congressman, welcome back to Saturday Midday.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. It's been a difficult week. I lost one of my dearest friends in Congress, Jackie Walorski.
Oh, horrible.
And then we had the attack of our FBI here in Cincinnati area. I want to condemn what that took place there, but I did have the chance to talk to our field agents yesterday, and they are in good spirits. They actually did their job very professionally, and they gave this gentleman every chance to not lose his life, but he chose to go in another direction. But they're doing okay. And, through all this, I do want to say that, our field agents and those that are out there, they're dedicated patriots. There's a reason we have an FBI. We want a strong FBI, but we created them for a reason. And unfortunately, too much at the top has gone astray, as we know. And so I don't want to fault those at the local level that are doing their jobs every day. But, you talk about the raid that took place. And, as we look at what's going on right now, honestly, we're about truth, justice, and the American way, especially on the Intelligence Committee. And the affidavit is really the key. No one has the right to retain classified documents. We know that on the Intelligence Committee, and we are actually very much screened every time we walk out of there, to make sure we're not taking anything with us accidentally, et cetera. So I'm always careful if I bring any of my other paperwork with me that the others don't land in the same file.
Sure.
And I am kind of curious about, the National Archives agency that has been part of this conversation right now. It seems to me that it would make a lot of sense that they would have oversight of what is going out of the White House when you leave, right?
Right.
And have that check and balance in place. What we don't know about what Mr. Trump has, there's a lot of things we don't know at this point, is, the president has the ability to declassify a lot of things. Maybe some of these documents were declassified. The other thing is the real hypocrisy, because we know that Hillary Clinton had classified documents on her server, and nothing happened to her. Nothing happened to her whatsoever. And so, she's considering running for president again. Well, that's interesting to think about. But, Merrick Garland had other options. And for him to say that there are no other options, you're going to have to prove that to us. Yeah. Because, you did not seemingly have to show up with this huge show of force, knowing that no one's home. What I've seen on the document, they had till August 19th to enact this raid by the magistrate.
They did. I've got it right in front of me.
Another question is, who's the magistrate? What's their background?
Congressman,
do they have a political motivation?
That's what I've been ranting and raving about this morning. And I know you're a physician and not a lawyer, but how in God's name can that man call himself a neutral and detached magistrate? And I'm sure you know the history. June 22nd, he disqualified himself from the case of Hillary Clinton or Trump versus Hillary Clinton. He makes those remarks that he made in 2017 on Facebook about Trump's integrity and character, which he's allowed to do. But he should have said, sorry, fellas, walk down the hall and find another magistrate judge. I don't know. That just sticks in my craw.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of reasons for people to recuse themselves from things, right? That as an attorney when it's appropriate. It's like, look, I have some interest in this or that, or I've made comments on this or that, so I should not be the one involved. It's like selecting a jury, right?
Yeah.
You try to find the people that are going to be agnostic going into it. And then that goes for Merrick Garland, too. I mean, certainly his shunning and not being selected for the Supreme Court, he certainly has an axe to grind towards Donald Trump. And so all of these things just don't add up well. And it's not like we can feel a great trust among people to say, like, yeah, even though that happened, I know he's going to do the right thing. That's not the mood, and that's not what we're feeling throughout our agencies. They demanded the documents were needed immediately, but they didn't. We want to know what documents were you actually looking for? Your last contact with the Trump team was in June,
right?
So why not in June? Why? And here's the thing. We on the Intelligence Committee, the reason we didn't have like a conference press conference for the whole conference. We just did the Intelligence Committee because we sit in a different position. And we are the ones that are in charge with national security risks that are out there. And they're claiming this is a huge national security risk. Okay, if that is the case, what the agencies need to understand is they're responsible to Congress, to the people of the United States of America, and in particular to our committee. And, you know, even if the raid's completely justified, that remains to be seen, we needed to be alerted immediately and told why. And time again from the intelligence community, we are told we're not at liberty to tell you. Well, then who has oversight over you? And that's the problem we have. That's why we spoke up. We demand that they have cooperation with us on the Intelligence Committee. That is our job.
Yep.
So there's a huge crisis in confidence, you know, from a personal experience and from a congressional experience. When you go to the shooting at the baseball game, where the guy clearly was after Republicans. He had names in his pocket. He was heavily armed. He asked if this was Republicans. And at the end of that, with Andrew McCabe in charge of the FBI, they came to us that were there that day, that were victims, and said, this guy merely wanted suicide by cop. Well, how can we have any confidence in an FBI that reaches that conclusion? I mean, the Alexandria police didn't reach that conclusion. They said it was terrorism, essentially assassination attempt, essentially an insurrection, trying to kill enough people in Congress that would change the balance of power in the House of Representatives. And that's what the FBI did. It's been 5 years since that event, and we still have not been permitted by the FBI to see the case file. And as we said, there's lessons to be learned here. Who directed this? Why did you get it so wrong? The guy did not even know police were there. They're undercover, and they're sitting in an unmarked vehicle, and they're calling it suicide by cop, which, by the way, takes one bullet.
That's right.
All you have to do is pull a gun on a cop. There were 136 rounds fired that day. But so you take these types of events, and there are more of them out there, and the hypocrisy is abundant, and you probably have been talking about it all morning. You know, who gets away with what, and then you have something like this happen. So we need to know the details. We need to know what was transpiring between the Trump team and what was transpiring between DOJ and the FBI and anybody that's looking into this. And we need to get honesty, and we need to have that, or we will never, ever get over this crisis in confidence that America has because of the double standards. And you know what? It's fair to look at motives, right? You're the attorney.
Yep.
When there's an action taken, was there a motive outside of just the national security concern that maybe drew this particular action as opposed to other actions? And when Hillary Clinton had all those classified emails and other things, she got to select. She worked something out with her attorneys, and she got to select what they get to see. You know, this is a problem. We're the United States Congress. We're the representatives of the people, and especially those on Intelligence Committee that have every clearance. We need to know what you are doing because we have the role of oversight over you. So let's be very clear where we head with this. You know, they're using the Espionage Act, and was initiated to prevent spying. You know, Donald Trump has more in his head than he probably has on paper, you know, and I can say the same thing for those of us on Intelligence Committee. We really have to sort through this, and the rules have to be transparent, and the rules have to have equal justice under the law. And it doesn't look like we're seeing that based on recent history in the last 5 to 10 years.
And you know what? You are so right about that. People that I know, Congressman, that aren't political people, they don't bother with it. They don't follow it because they're too wrapped up in their daily lives, raising their kids and earning money. They're starting to pay attention to it now. And it's like you just said. They wake up, my goodness, we truly do have two sets of justice in this. I think it's changing. I hope so, because as you accurately point out, that is crucial. But let me ask you this, and it's a two-pronged question. What can and what will the House Intelligence Committee do before we take the majority to investigate this? I don't know that there's much you can do, but if and when we take the majority, then what can the House Intelligence Committee do?
Oh, well, we have already put out several letters to the powers that be demanding information, as we just talked about, the questions that we have. And we want answers to those questions. And I'll tell you another thing that we've started to do, and actually some of the Democrats are a little fed up with the way the agencies feel like they run the country and they're not responsible to the American people. Some of the Democrats are getting fed up with it too. So in this year's Intelligence Authorization Act, which is not public, but we did a lot of fencing. So just take the baseball file, the file on what happened at the baseball field. We said if we don't get to see it in its entirety, then, and arbitrarily I'm giving you a number because I won't give you the exact number, but this many millions you will not receive until we get this. So as we're doing the budget, we're starting to say, look, basically, we created your agency and we fund your agency. And so if you aren't transparent with us, if we're not getting the information, down some departments because you're not giving us the answers. And that's been done before. We can get things like that into law, but I would rather it just be a cooperative effort. When I got on Intelligence Committee, my goal was I'm working with the intelligence community. We're a partner with the intelligence community rather than it being adversarial. But unfortunately, because they think they can set policies and come to us and say, well, it's our policy in the agency to not tell you these things, which has happened more than once. That's the wrong answer. We're a government of the people, and we're the representatives of the people, and specifically our committee. So we will be acting as aggressively as we can. And then in our bill that we passed out of the House Committee on Intelligence, we have a lot of those fences in there for information that we are seeking that they've been refusing or stalling to give us.
I tell you what, I can't wait till that happens. And when we do get the majority, I kind of hesitate to even talk about it because I don't want to jinx it, but it is absolutely needed. Hey, we got a couple minutes left here. I wanted to ask you if you can comment, and if you can't, I understand, on the seizure this week of Representative Scott Perry's cell phone. What's up with that, if you know and if you can comment?
Yeah, and I really don't have, and I haven't had a chance to talk to Mr. Perry. There's a guy who's a retired one-star general from the National Guard. What we're concerned about, cautious about, is it, again, arrogant authority or authorities using their political mindset to go after certain people. I hope that's not the case, but I'm concerned as to why they would do that at all. Scott Perry's a very bright guy. Certainly he doesn't particularly agree with liberal mindset. And I hope that that's not the motivation for them to seize his phone. I think it's a scary time. And I will tell you, going back to what you were talking about before, so a friend of mine, he's conservative, and he said a lot of his family members are liberal. They're Democrats. But he said with this raid, they are concerned too. They think, well, what else can happen? And if it can happen to the former president of the United States, it can happen to me. How can we get started? Now you see, a member of Congress, they're going after, and, it's really concerning to American people, and I think it is crossing the aisle.
It is, and it's a Rubicon or an aisle that we don't need to cross in this country to become a South American banana republic. But anyway, Congressman Wenstrup, really appreciate you sharing your thoughts with us this morning.
Good to be with you, Mike.
Okay.
You have a good day.